Why living well beats getting even for scapegoat survivors. Well, one of my favorite movies from childhood was called White Men Can't Jump, and it featured Woody Harrelson, who was the white guy in the movie named Billy Hoyle, and his black friend named Sidney Dean, who is played by Wesley Snipes. So Billy in the movie is a great basketball player, and he and Sidney would hustle people in two-on-two pickup games for a lot of money because all the opponents would underestimate Billy since he's white. Billy's girlfriend is a very spirited and wise woman played by Rosie Perez, and they're madly in love. Well, despite Billy's success on the court, he's very sensitive about his ability or lack thereof to dunk the basketball. So, in one part of the movie, he and Sydney win a basketball tournament and have thousands of dollars in their pocket. And on the drive home, Billy takes offense to Sydney implying that he can't dunk. So Billy bets his share of the winnings that he can dunk. And of course, he loses not just the money, but also his girlfriend. And I won't spoil the rest of the movie, but suffice it to say that this theme of Billy trying to prove he can dunk at the great expense to other important parts of his life keeps playing out for him until he realizes that the costs of trying to prove he can dunk outweigh the reward promised by being able to do it. Well, I think this movie illustrates such an important point when it comes to recovering from narcissistic abuse for scapegoat survivors. Because if you had to survive such a childhood, as the scapegoat in your family, then your dignity was under constant assault. And this is infuriating to our cores. It inspires a powerfully visceral response to get your respect back. And this response can be essential to survive such abuse. It offers the scapegoat child hope that they can establish themselves eventually as someone worthy of their narcissistic parents' respect. That if they can prove their narcissistic parent wrong about them, then they might unlock their own self-respect. But as this logic goes, not before then. So now the scapegoat survivor gets locked in a battle that they must win if they want to respect themselves. With those kinds of stakes, not much else can matter or take priority. This includes can include the scapegoat survivor's own life, their goals, friendships, and relationships. Time and energy get poured into the mission of proving to themselves that their narcissistic parent was wrong about them. The scapegoat survivor may grow to feel like this mission must be accomplished before they can participate in the rest of their lives. Just like Billy Hoyle believed he had to accomplish his mission of being able to dunk before he could be happy in the rest of his life. In today's video, I'm going to show scapegoat survivors the trap of trying to prove the narcissistic abuser wrong about you. The pull to do this is powerful because it promises to restore lost dignity. But I'm going to show you why this effort costs far more than it's worth. And watch until the end because I'm going to offer 2 ways to keep your focus on your life instead of the narcissistic abuser's opinion about you. Well, if you're new here, this channel is for scapegoat survivors who are ready to understand what happened and are seeking freedom from those old rules. And my name is Reid, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist in California. And I specialize in recovery from narcissistic abuse, especially for those who were in the role of scapegoat in their families of origin. And after working with hundreds of such survivors and going through the process myself, I've seen that real recovery follows 3 predictable steps. And this has led me to what I call the 3 pillars of recovery. Pillar number 1 is making sense of what happened so that you know it wasn't your fault. Pillar number 2 is gaining distance from narcissistically abusive people today and closeness to safer people. And pillar number 3 is to live in defiance of the narcissist rules. I think it's also essential to find and participate in communities of people who can get, validate, and support you on this path. I've both seen and experienced large improvements in quality of life after applying these pillars. And this video today falls under pillar number 2, gaining distance from narcissistic abusers. The trap of proving your narcissistic abuser wrong. Being the scapegoat child means being denied status. Your narcissistic parent's entire self-worth hinged on being the highest status in the family and you the lowest. So the game was rigged against you when it came to feeling respected in your family. You weren't fairly evaluated to determine whether you deserved equal status as everyone else. You were very likely arbitrarily put into the role of lowest status in order to meet the narcissistic parents' disturbed emotional demands. Scapegoat children often register at their cores how unfair this is. And unfairness as an experience makes humans angry. It energizes us to restore things so that they're more fair. Well, the dilemma for the scapegoat child is that they have to stay in relationship to the parent who's also treating them unfairly. A child can't just walk away from their parent and survive. Kids need to be in their parents' reality to have a psychological existence. Otherwise, they can get thrown into that terrible space of feeling like and being nobody to no one. So the child has to find a way to manage their indignation at being so disrespected by their parent. This means adopting beliefs about being defective and undeserving that then justify the parent's treatment, which gives the child less reason to be outraged. Of course, there's a tremendous cost to the child's development by having to believe such tormenting things about themselves. But it's a sacrifice they have to make to keep the relationship to their parent intact. So the trap is now set. The scapegoat child gets treated in a disrespectful way that evokes the child's protest. But that protest threatens their relationship to the parent. So the child copes by believing there's something wrong with them, the child, and that they deserve less than others. Now the parent is simply treating them the way they deserve to be treated. The child concludes that if they could just change their narcissistic parent's opinion of them, then all would be well. So they set forth in trying to prove their parent was wrong about them. This is all a trap because of how beholden the child now is to the parent's opinion of them. The child's own opinion of themselves doesn't get to matter. They are chained to their parents' view. And here are 3 costs of that. One is your energy gets depleted because it's now directed towards someone outside of you instead of pursuing your own life goals. Second, your mind and body move towards the parent and away from yourself, your friendships, and your relationships outside of the family. And third, you're stressed by the feeling that the job of convincing your parent about your worth is never done. The scapegoat child and survivor find that their dignity is at stake, so what else can possibly matter? But this results in being held captive by their parents' view of them. It also means having the beliefs that they are defective and undeserving reinforced with every interaction, real or imagined in the scapegoat survivor's mind's eye with their parent. These grim and constricting beliefs of being defective and undeserving have been necessary to survive this relationship, and they get subtly activated when in contact with the person who made them necessary in the first place. Well, let's illustrate this with another anonymized case example. So Jordan was 5 years old when she recalled her father mocking her in front of the rest of the family. She had fallen down outside and scraped her knee. It was bleeding and she started crying. Her father looked at her impatiently and said, "Okay, that's enough, Jordan. Stop with the hysterics and get up." Jordan went from expecting comfort and help to feeling utter shame. She felt her father's contemptuous gaze and experienced herself like he seemed to be, as a disgraceful crybaby. Later that night at the dinner table, he tightened the screws even tighter on her. He bellowed, "You should have heard how loud Jordan wailed after falling down today. I thought she was going to break the windows of the cars. And all for just a little scrape. Our daughter the drama queen," he mocked. Well, Jordan's face went flush, and she felt that same searing shame she'd felt earlier that day. She vowed never to express pain of any sort to her father again. She'd prove to him, she thought, that she's not a crybaby, no matter what it took. Surrendering the effort to prove yourself. Well, I want to distinguish how the effort to prove your narcissistic parent wrong about you is different from being angry at them. I think it's very important, of course, in recovering from such abuse to experience your anger at how you were mistreated. Doing so conveys the message to yourself that you matter and deserve better. Anger at how you were treated also implies that you don't need to change nor fix yourself. Instead, you're fine as you are and take offense to being treated by your parent as though you were not. Scapegoat survivors can profitably surrender their effort to prove themselves to their narcissistic parent. And this means migrating away from what the parent thinks of you. For scapegoat survivors, caring about what their parent thinks of them may have been the only bond they had with their parent. Sure, this form of a bond is tormenting, but it may have been with you from early on. Granting less importance to what your narcissistic parent thinks of you may then mean also having to grieve the loss of hope in that parent. If you no longer care about what your narcissistic parent thinks of you, then you're surrendering the hope that you can eventually change their minds about you. That means accepting that you unfortunately had a parent who could not prize you the way you certainly deserved. Well, let's go back to Jordan. As she grew up, she began to experience the world the way her father had treated her. She expected people to pounce on her with mockery if she showed the slightest amount of vulnerability. So she worked as hard as she possibly could to keep a stiff upper lip, as they say. She never complained about anything to anyone. She did whatever her parents or teachers asked of her, and she seemed like the perfectly behaved child on the outside. On the inside, this was all done in an effort to prove her father wrong about her, that she wasn't a complainer and she was as tough as they come. Her unconscious logic was that if she could change her father's mind about her, then it would finally be safe to ask for what she needed. Then and only then could life feel less harsh and forgiving. The hardest part about walking away. Well, walking away from a narcissistic parent's opinion of you may initially feel humiliating. The worst part about bullying of any form is the victim's lingering sense that it was they who let the bully get away with it, that they didn't stand up and fight enough. The victim may be left thinking that they are cowardly and a disappointment to themselves. A scapegoat child and scapegoat survivor may rightly want to then restore their dignity to themselves by doing battle with the bully today, the bully being the narcissistic parent. As intuitive as this response is, it can ensnare you in the trap I've been describing so far. The alternative of walking away from the bully may be hard initially, but pays off with time. You may feel like you are, once again, letting the narcissistic parent get away with treating you so horribly. And it may feel like life could never feel livable if you were to do this. I think that this conflict reflects a major point that must be accepted in the process of recovering from narcissistic abuse. That is, we all want to live in a world where parents treat their children with kindness and respect. And that includes the scapegoat survivor. As you grow to realize the ways you were mistreated were never your fault, you may feel outraged at the parent for violating this rule of the world. It may initially feel too disconcerting to accept that you live in a world where parents should treat their children with kindness and respect, and yet you grew up with a parent who didn't do this. These two facts underscore how being human means we're all vulnerable to tragedy. Just like a car accident, where we should all abide by the laws of the road, but there are a minority of situations where drivers don't and people get hurt. After a childhood spent as the scapegoat, there's an understandable draw to try to set the situation right. Teach the narcissistic parent that you were the wrong child to mess with. So, something to that effect. In the case of a car accident, it could mean replaying the accident over and over in your head to think of what you should have done differently. These efforts reflect how difficult it can be to accept that we live in a world where tragedy is possible and that such tragedy happened to you. If you do live in a world where the tragedy of narcissistic abuse happened to you as a child and there's nothing you can do about that now, then what do you want to do? Well, this question, I think, reflects an acceptance of the fact that such abuse can and does happen. It also highlights how you still have life to live and you get to decide how you want it to go. Now the energy that was once spent trying to restore things to how they should have been can go towards crafting the future you want for yourself. Reframing things like this can help you move through those temporary feelings of humiliation that can emerge as you surrender the quest to prove your bully, in this case a narcissistic parent, wrong about you. Well, let's go again back to Jordan and fast forward to her adulthood, where she was married to a man who was not at all like her father. His name was Brent, and he was non judgmental and a very supportive partner to her. Jordan worked as a legal assistant in a law office. The head lawyer expected everyone to be at his beck and call from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every weekday. At first, Jordan was determined not to balk at any of these kind of outrageous requirements. She deprioritized everything in her life that got in the way of meeting the job's expectations. And this meant that she was rarely home to see her husband. They could only eat dinner together on the weekends. And Brent eventually told her that he wanted to see her more than he was. At first, Jordan scoffed and saw his request to be unreasonable. It seemed like he was asking her to be a crybaby at work and tell her boss that she couldn't hack it. And that prospect felt humiliating to her. So she kept on like she had been doing for the next couple months. And finally, Brent had had enough. He told her that he didn't want to be in a marriage where he rarely saw his wife. He implored Jordan to reconsider his request and said that he was going on a trip with his best friend for the next week. Over those 7 days, Jordan was thrown into an inner crisis. She loved her husband and didn't want to lose him. She also didn't want to lose to this job. She still saw it to be a humiliating defeat if she were to tell her boss that she could no longer work the hours expected of her. So she decided to talk to a therapist because it seemed like a decision that she needed to talk through with someone else. 2 ways to walk away from the trap. Well, as with everything in recovering from narcissistic abuse, I think it's imperative to participate in new relationships where you are supported and well regarded. There's no substitute for new corrective experiences in actual relationships. The surest way to do this is by getting into therapy. Working with a therapist can afford you the needed new relational footing to make walking away from your narcissistic parents' opinion of you seem survivable. As a child, walking away from the parent like this would have meant being catastrophically alone. In order to do this today, you need to know that this same catastrophe won't strike. Being in therapy can give your system, your mind and body in essence, the confidence that this will not happen. The second way to walk away from this trap is through participating in groups of people that see and appreciate you for who you are today. Being in such groups makes living for your own sake feel like its own reward. And this can take a lot of the sting out of giving up the effort to win against your narcissistic parent. One such group is my live online class called Breaking the Scapegoat Spell. This class is limited to 10 students and teaches you how to notice, interrupt, and redirect your energies that keep you spellbound to the role of scapegoat. And by spellbound, I mean living in ways that comply with those beliefs you may have had to adopt to survive childhood. The beliefs like I'm defective or I'm undeserving. But it's not just an information dump. In each of the classes, you'll take the tools and concepts that I teach and apply them to your own experience through guided exercises. Then, still in the class, you'll share with your assigned partner what you discovered about yourself in the exercise. By working with the same student partner for the entire course, you get to experience what a safe experience with another person actually feels like. And you can learn more about the group in the description box below or by clicking here. Well, let's see how this all played out in Jordan's life. In her first session with her therapist named Sarah, she told her about the dilemma she faced. And Sarah asked, "Do you have any thoughts about why it feels so devastating to ask for a more reasonable life-work balance?" And Jordan said, "Well, I just don't do that. It makes me feel like I'm a complainer, and I hate that." And Sarah said, "I see. So the stakes feel really high. It sounds like asking for any accommodation at work feels utterly humiliating." "Yes," Jordan exclaimed. Sarah asked, "Hey, how was it growing up if you ever needed something from say, others or the people in your family?" Jordan immediately said, "Oh, I tried to never do that. I always felt like a crybaby who wanted too much from my parents. They made that clear to me really early on. I hated it and never wanted to give them ammunition to put me down like that." Sarah said, "I see. That makes a lot of sense. It's been hard to experience this decision at work as different from what you faced growing up in your family. And yet, it seems like you're here because you're wondering if there's a different way out of this situation that might not require you to surrender your marriage. And Jordan said, yes, you're right. I don't want to lose Brent. I think I'm going to have to bite the bullet and tell my boss that I can't work nights anymore. Whatever kind of inner punishment I have to face is worth it. My marriage is just too important. And thus began Jordan's journey to understanding why she had to devote so much of her inner life to proving her father wrong about her. Over the years that followed in therapy, she grew to see how much trying to win this battle with him was taking from her. She gradually shifted her priorities towards her friends and family and away from the maniacal effort to show that she would do whatever was required of her at work. And after a few years, she was nagged far less internally by the claim that she was a crybaby and needed to prove otherwise. Instead, she was more absorbed in what she wanted for herself and how she could show up for the people who were most important to her. Well, if these ideas help you see yourself more clearly, then that's exactly what this channel is here for. To give scapegoat survivors some understanding and tools to live life more freely and deservedly. And with that, I want to thank you for watching and your continued support of this channel and the resources around it. And with that, I look forward to posting again next Friday. Take care.